My name is Kimberly Cato, and I'm the registered psychotherapist and CEO of ROOTS Counselling Services, where we purpose to come alongside people who are overwhelmed and perhaps blindsided by life-altering circumstances and give them tools and strategies designed to help them, transform their trauma into triumph.
I want to introduce Nikola Blair, a qualified drama therapist and picture exchange communication facilitator, PECS system, wonderful, practicing over 22 years. Nikola facilitates individual and group intercultural therapy. Nikola is the founder of Act On It Therapies. I'm sure you saw her on CTV. That specializes in psychotherapeutic drama therapy. She is also an advocate for intercultural therapy in her practice. She is a public speaker, a public service change management consultant who has actively worked with Halton Region Catholic Education Board for over 6 years and formed the first Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Black Racism Committee in the Halton region. That has now been developed as DARE, rolling out across the Halton Region School Board and beyond. Congratulations. Welcome. Welcome, Nikola.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the opportunity to gather together to talk about such a pressing issue. What brought me to therapy is I came to Canada many years ago as an exchange student and got working with the Pandora's Women Group in Alberta. And then I realized at that time they called it the Native Criminal Justice System. I understood how against or how inconducive to the well-being of the Indigenous population it really was. And that really inspired me to go back to the UK and really get involved in social work. So that led into social work several years later in management. I then went into therapy, and it was through my work with the Dennis Hill Foundation, which is based in our Maudsley, Bethlehem Hospital, all the history of mental health, it was based there. And I recognized the sad reality that I am with a multidisciplinary team, and when my clients kiss their teeth, they are going to be heavily medicated because of fear or because of I'm not aware of what that expression actually is, and took it as intimidation. And that fueled my passion to really work with with communities that are really up against it, and that includes the Black community, young women, and communities that are human trafficked. And so my passion in coming back to Canada several years later, I've been really involved with addressing an issue that was prevalent to me. My children experienced firsthand racism. The school was called out. I raised it out on social media, and that birthed the committee. Now, since leaving the school, the committee and the school have gone on and developed the IDARE program, which I'm proud to see something positive come from such a negative experience. And so I can only say it's about understanding your rights. It's about advocating. It's about understanding the pen and paper and the power of it, especially when you're in this community. So I'm here to talk about the cycle, the disproportionate numbers, and really is about looking at how we can integrate some of our quality assurances across other platforms, which is mental health. So I'm passionate about the subject. Thank you for having me, and thanks to ROOTS for really bringing this to the forefront. Thank you.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to second that. I think it is. I think we are, when clients or myself has experienced moments of mental disturbing thoughts or whatever, it's the fact that we actually go externally for acceptance is the default, when in fact, if only we can, once you become comfortable with your own reality, recognizes the cause and the triggers, you actually start engaging in what is it that I need from me. And it's about putting yourself first and foremost at the front, as that's the most important thing. And it is a challenge, and it is very hard to do, but it can be done, because when you put yourself first and foremost, the voices of I'm not good enough, it's not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm letting people down, I'm a mess, and all the negative thoughts start to find its place, because you're putting yourself in front and foremost. And so one of the major quotes that I've held on to in my life has been one by Irving Allen, and it says simply as, to love means to actively be concerned for the life and the growth of another person, period. So if I can actively love you as a person, the shame that I carry, the shame that you carry, I want to relieve you from it, because I'm more interested in your growth, your stability, your wellness. And that has got, and anybody that cannot embrace that is just not for you. And it's about getting the people that are for you in line with your path and journey. I think I'd just like to add to that. I totally agree with regards to the role of the church. I think we need to also, as a Black community, really go back to the beginning and say, look, when we're talking about trauma, we've got to recognize that as the system goes, is that we don't allow ourselves the right to be ill. We don't allow ourselves the right to be mentally ill, let alone ill. We're ill, we're to work, we're sending our kids to school because the social economic status in our family network is that the child has to go to school because I can't take a day off because financially it is what it is. So the video, when it's talking about the urban experience, we also need to recognize that when not all of us are coming from an urban experience. And what does that look like? So then how do we give ourselves the right to feel, I need help, how do I get help? The second thing is that whole, the cape, I'm the Black warrior, I can do it all. No, well, what happens to our boys that are even more challenged with identity? I'm a male, what does that look like? And so when we allow ourselves to be forgiven, when we forgive ourselves and allow ourselves to be human, then we can start allowing ourselves to really get early intervention. And then what everyone has spoken of, and especially the young man, Nicholas Prince, talked about early intervention, the fear of letting go, the fear of losing control.
That's right.
That is the first point of fear when a person feels.
Wait, sit back.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were saying to me.
It's all good.
I thought you said sit back.
No, it's all good, honey.
It's okay. But yeah, it's even down to the point of what is urbanization? What does that look like?
Yeah.
To the stereotype, poverty, drugs, and it is impacted. But what happens when we are dealing with upward mobility? Upward mobility is a totally different thing. What are we talking about when we talk about children with mixed heritage or mixed identity? We're no longer one. We are so much more than that. And so as soon as so when you talk about education, we've got to talk about the challenge that we have is that we need to educate that we are of trauma. We are our history of trauma. We're generationally traumatized, and then they go through the experience of who am I? Then they've got to work. Then young people, they have to then fathom out, well, what's the gender? What's the sexuality? What's the preference? What is this whole acronyms? So then we get to the point whereby when he says the service isn't their service is not meeting the needs. How do I provide therapy to individuals when I'm not looking at who you are? So as a clinician in university, and I'm seeing, you haven't even asked me where I'm from, but you're giving me therapy. The clinicians I work with don't even want to talk about racism. So when I bring it up, it's a case of, well, why are you being a troublemaker? What is that? And then I'm sitting in front of a child that is also struggling with their own mental health, or a grown woman or a grown man who's lived all his life. And a part of that mental health is challenging as to who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? As in culturally, who am I? Systematically, how am I perceived? And then where is the equitable access to services?
Yes.
What does that look like? When I go for pain, what do I get given? When my colleagues or friends go for therapy, it's okay for someone who is not of visual minority or not Black to access mental health services. It's fashionable. You hear it.
Yeah,
I'm in therapy. And I'm like, oh, you are? As in, but then when a Black person says, I'm in therapy, it has an alarming
yes.
It creates fear, it creates an inability. So when schools are responding to that stereotype, and we parents are unable to voice and advocate because we're living from a victimization.
Yes.
And I'm conscious of saying victimization, but I'm more inclined to say when we haven't found a way to empower our own selves, to call it what it is and to ask for the help that we need. We're in a cycle of, we've got so much work to do, like Lady Janelle Livy said. But the fundamental thing about that film, about the clip, was that recognizing that what we need is different.
Yes.
What our sons who are mixed race is different. And so how do we even empower those family members or individuals to support someone who is of color that is not of the same race as themselves? Like, how do I identify with them? And so this is a well down packed issue that we need to accept and very much advocate that, yes, we have a need and we require a service that looks like what we need.
Exactly. Thank you. And it's multi-layered. Thank you for sharing that. It really, that secrecy piece, that, you know, having to, particularly as an individual who's surrounded, whether it be working or interacting in predominantly white spaces, and having to cap and silence my experience because it is gaslit if I speak, or there's jeopardy of retaliation if I speak, or jeopardy of losing a position or my finances or all of those things if I do speak. So that shame becomes the, silence becomes the dominant response that genuinely feeds shame. And so it continually grows because you're not in a space where it's safe to speak about the thing that is causing you distress. And the less you are able to speak, the more you are silent, the bigger that shame becomes. And it just becomes a wretchedly vicious cycle. So yeah, this in particular, this little clip has really resonated with me. How about you, Nikola?
Oh, wow. Wow, that you know it does. Because straight away, like, because you know, I've spoken many times about the Johar window of how we self-compromise or show up half of ourselves because of the upward mobility. So here we've got, you know, taken last year, we've got Floyd George on the neck, we've got the whole outburst, and then people in positions, Black people in positions, are fearful of speaking out against the situation because in fear of their job, fear of being the troublesome one. And now they're faced with a situation where their organizations are saying, we need you to pour in, we need you to speak out. And that's happening across the school board, where they're going to their Black teachers saying, tell me your experience. They're going to the Black people saying, well, tell me what your views are. And I'm having to educate them and say, well, this is the first time for these children that they are being asked to really show up for themselves and speak on their behalf as to how they feel about the representation in the school. And what we need to do is support children and support people in positions of power, advocate for themselves and wholeheartedly exist in their true identity and their truth. And so when I hear this, and, you know, I'm always saying that, you know, isolation is mental health's best friend. And as long as you hold that dear, you'll know to run in the opposite direction of isolation, because that's what we do. It's human behavior to isolate ourselves because of, can that therapist or can my mom, or I've been often had hold me, contain my stuff, because my stuff might be too big for you. Yes. And so that is where sometimes the mismatch as a therapist comes, in a sense, the person is carrying around such a story, whether it's university, whether it be in school, whether it be a teenager going to the high school and it's new and it's now online. How do I speak up when the teacher's saying, yeah, man, and it's a white teacher? It's like, hold on a minute. I said, so I'm now speaking to my daughter saying, well, what did you say? I don't really want to talk up about it. So she's showing up with half of herself. Because what she's doing is is marginalizing her own self. Because of not the fact that he said it, but it's the impact of not being able to speak out. And that is the trauma, and that is the post-traumatic stress. When you're in a workplace, when you're being like, patronized, or I don't see it that way, and you're a minority, or it's not, or interculturally, your Black peers are not speaking up or supporting you, or seeing when it's blatant. So you are double-edged in a position, and then how much, and sometimes those allies sometimes are not our own. It's someone else who just like Canada knows, I don't think her name spoke, like, you're from South America. How do you relate to that? Well, it's all about speaking up, standing up, and acting on the subject in the here and now, because many times things pass, and when you equate the amount of times you've had to deal with not showing up for yourself or not speaking up for yourself, and then isolating yourself within a group where you should feel comfortable, that's a reoccurring cycle of self-harm. And it's an emotional self-harm that we internalize for ourselves, that we can't sometimes find into words. And that is the alternative Michael narrative. That is giving you a voice through a different medium. When I can't find the words to explain the pains that I'm actually feeling, let me have some art, let me have some drama, let me have expression. Because I'm not being able to be seen. And when I say to Danny, I see you. I need to see you. I see you. And I think a lot of the time we are not showing up for ourselves. We're not calling out for ourselves. And we need to, I also recognize how hard that is too, because it's part of a new world where people are saying, we want you to, but only and then mental health, I want you to show me your mental health, but as a therapist, I don't really want to deal with that right now. What do you mean? This is my story, Ian, my story. You know, so.
And it's interesting with mental health, when you finally do find that identified safe space to go in and share and speak, you're very cognizant of the fact that you've been carrying such a tremendously heavy load that therapists genuinely, for the most part, they can't carry it. They can't carry it. They can't hear it. They can't contain it. They have no space for it.